What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name is Fareed. As a part of today's video, I want to take you guys through some of the recent price action that we've seen with Bitcoin retracing about 8% in a single day, one of the largest drawdowns that we've had since the FTX collapse taking place in November of 2022. Now, that said, I want to dive into everything related to altcoins, specifically Cardano, after laying the foundation when it comes to corrections in the space, with Bitcoin obviously being that leader, setting the tone. We've seen in times past where Bitcoin corrects 5 to 10%. We typically have altcoins correcting 15 to 20%, given the fact that right now Bitcoin is in its dominance season, but we are going to be seeing a shift, hopefully within the next couple of months, from Bitcoin leading the way and taking the dominance to altcoins now beginning to move faster than Bitcoin. So hopefully this will help to kind of lay the foundation as to what we can expect here, given the fact that we've had a huge run up with Bitcoin running up from about $23,000 or $24,000 back in October of 2023 all the way to 73,000 just last week. Now, this has been an unprecedented run, with Bitcoin breaking the all-time high about 1 month before the actual Bitcoin halving, which has never been done in the prior 3 cycles that Bitcoin has had. That said, let's jump into today's TA, kicking things off here with Bitcoin and then closing off here with Cardano. First things first, I want to highlight the time that it takes from top to a brand new all-time high, showcasing something really interesting. Again, showing the fact that we have now been a little bit ahead of schedule when it comes to breaking into new all-time high territory, which I personally think actually warrants a cool-off period or a slight correction. So as you can see here, 37 months from the top set in 2013 to breaking into new all-time highs in 2017. Again, 35 months passing between the all-time high set in 2017 all the way to breaking past that all-time high back in November of 2020. Now we set our latest all-time high in November of 2021, and we've now broken past that. If I zoom in just a little bit here, touching 73,000 about a month early. So as you can see, that the trend typically around 35 to 37 months. However, this time around we've broken past that all-time high in just a short amount of time, being 28 months. Now I want to take a moment here to highlight that something is different this particular cycle, and that's the fact that we now have ETFs now buying up Bitcoin. I believe in one single day, we saw just one ETF manager scooping up over 12,000 Bitcoin. Now, right now, there's only about 900 Bitcoins coming out into the ecosystem per day, leading into the halving, which that's going to then reduce to 450 Bitcoin. So a lot more being scooped up or being supplied, or excuse me, being bought up from the market than there is being supplied into the new market. Now, keep in mind that the 900 Bitcoins is coming strictly from miners. So any additional Bitcoin that's being scooped up by these ETF managers is coming from people that already held Bitcoin. So Bitcoin basically shifting from old hands into new hands. Now, let's jump back in here. I want to quickly also touch on the fact that typically Bitcoin 30 days prior to the halvings has never been at this sort of price range. So looking back here at the last halving, again, this is on the daily, on the weekly time frame. Let me actually jump into the daily here, which should hopefully make this a little bit easier to see. We can see that Bitcoin, about 1 month from the halving here, was, let's see here, about 116% away from the all-time high. Scrolling back into the cycle prior to that, we had the halving taking place on July 16th, or in July of 2016. About 30 days prior to that, Bitcoin was about 100% away from the all-time high. Again, if I reset the chart and jump into where we are now, again, just 30 days away, we're only about 10% away from the all-time high. So again, Bitcoin doing something brand new. Now, with respect to bull market corrections, I want to quickly touch on a tweet here put out by Charles Edwards, in which he states that not only have we had one of the biggest winning streaks when it comes to Bitcoin pumping since October all the way until March right now, but a 20% pullback is typically normal or in the cards when it comes to Bitcoin. all the way up until about a 30% pullback. So it states here a 20% pullback here takes us back to 59K, whereas a 30% pullback would take us all the way back to about 51K. And these are all levels that we should be comfortable expecting as possibilities. Again, Bitcoin has given us a ton of upside here since the breakout back in October. Let's see here, that's a total of 168%. So giving back 20% or 30% would set us back somewhere around a month to 2 months. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it shouldn't necessarily scare the entire crypto community, given the fact that it's given us over 160%. Now, let's take a look at some of the historical corrections that we've had here. So I'm going to quickly just turn this on. And this is going to be breaking down some of the corrections that we've had over the course of the last year to year and a half. So starting all the way back here, this was right after the lows from FTX. We saw Bitcoin climbing all the way to about 25,000 and then retracing all the way down until about 20,000. So that was about a 57-point move, which was about a correction of 22%, lasting 22 days. We saw a much longer correction. Now, given the fact that it was a same percentage. So here we lost 20% again. However, it took us about 62 days to come out of that and then correct and then break past and make a new all-time high. Now, following that, we had a third correction coming in again at about 20%, and that lasted about 60 days. So one correction lasting 22 days, one lasting 62, and another one lasting just about the same time, 60 days. Now, scrolling over into the recent leg up, we've really only seen one correction, and this came right after the ETF news where we hit 49K, and then we trickled all the way back down to about 38K before making this last push all the way up to about 73K. Now, this I would say was a very, very quick correction, if you want to call it that. It lasted about 12 days. Again, Bitcoin trending down about 20%. So where does that leave us right now? Zooming in into the current price range. Again, we've touched 73,000. We're currently trading at about 63,700, which is a 13% correction. Scrolling down a little bit to about 20%. Just like Mr. Edwards mentioned, takes us to about the 58 to 59K range, and then bringing it all the way down to about 30%. Let's see here. That takes us to just about $51,000. Now, on the daily, we haven't actually touched the 50-day moving average, which is the faster moving average. And then we've got the 200-day, which is the slower moving average down here at the very bottom. So the last time we touched the 50-day moving average was right here, again, where we broke past it after the ETF halving around the January 29th timeline. And so this would be healthy if we were to come back and touch that 50-day timeline. Now, keep in mind that this average will continue to rise as the Bitcoin price kind of drops back into it. So we could see something like this where we have the average continue to move up as we get Bitcoin trickling down and beginning to consolidate here. Now, if we lose that point of support, what we could have here is the 200-day average beginning to move over here as the 50-day begins to sort of roll over, where they begin to meet and cross. And then again, Bitcoin price action sort of coming to meet it around here, around the $57,000 range as we begin to accumulate. Again, a very simple example of where we did see that was all the way back here. Let me remove that. This was back, let's see here, around the October timeline, again, where Bitcoin had been trading well above, let me remove these out of the way here, where Bitcoin had been trading well above the 50-day, and then it came back in here, and then use it as support, bouncing right off of that. So again, it would not and it should not scare us to see Bitcoin moving back into these averages, finding support, building a little bit of time to consolidate or taking a little bit of time to consolidate before working its way back up. So right now we're about 13% down. What I'm saying is that we should be expecting more of a correction here. Again, just taking a look at what we saw back after the ETF halving. This was 21%, and we haven't even gotten to that range yet. So that 21% here again would take us to right at about 58,000, and we're trading at about 64,000. So a little bit more to go just to match what we saw in previous times. Now, what I want to quickly highlight is the fact that when Bitcoin corrects, we have altcoins correcting even harder. So as a clear example here, I just showed you guys there this correction. This is the one coming from the ETF halving, or excuse me, from the ETF announcement, that 21%. Let's take a look at how Cardano actually fared during that same exact timeline. So we had Cardano making a leg up following Christmas time, and it topped out right here. And this was at a price of about 60 cents. And we saw the correction down all the way surrounding the ETF timeline of about 34%. It wasn't until January 27th that we had that kickoff leg into the next run, taking us into a gain of about 80% from that low of about 44 cents. So we saw Bitcoin correcting 20%, and we saw Cardano correcting about 30%, so about 10% more. And just as an example, let's take a look at Avalanche here. Again, topping out at about $50 and then correcting all the way down 46%, all the way to about the $27 range. Let's take a look here at one more, let's say Solana. And we have Solana topping out at 127, correcting about 37% down to about the $80 range before finding its next leg up all the way to the $200 range where we were trading just about a week ago. So what this tells me is that if Bitcoin were to correct about 30% from our current point, not only would we be back down to about that $51,000 range, but we could expect altcoins to correct anywhere between 30 to 45%. Again, given the fact that Bitcoin does hold a lot of the dominance as it stands. So if we're to take a look right now, that would bring Cardano all the way back down to about the 45-cent range, which did act as a key level of support here back in the January timeline. So we've got that range right there of support if Cardano were to come down in the next couple of weeks. Now, do keep in mind that the price has been trickling down at a much slower rate than before, which tells me that this may not actually get scooped up immediately, but this does offer a brand new opportunity for anybody looking to get in. And if you missed the last leg up, this could offer you the opportunity to potentially catch the next one as we begin to really get closer to that much anticipated altcoin season. So I wanted to take a minute here to highlight what we're seeing with respect to Bitcoin, the recent pullbacks, and then how that could potentially translate into a corrective move for Cardano. Again, the Cardano chart has not touched the 200-day moving average since November of 2023. So literally over 6 months since we've come back to touch this moving average. Again, it shouldn't surprise us. That should act as a really strong base of support, and we should hopefully see a bounce from there. Now, if we break through that and begin to really close a lot of candles under that 200-day moving average, that I think would cause a lot of concern. But again, keep in mind that as price is beginning to trickle downwards, this average will continue to trickle upwards. So by the time that they meet, the moving average may be at 47, 48, 49, or even 50 cents. So keep that in mind there. The sell-off in my eyes is completely normal. This is expected. We've had a huge leg up here. Cardano from the lows all the way to the high, about 218%. It shouldn't surprise us to see a corrective move just like before of about 32%. Again, if we see one from here, that takes us to about, let's see here, 54 cents. But I personally think that we will be coming down and potentially making way or touching this 200-day moving average, acting as a lot of support. So that will do it there. Just a little bit of technical analysis. Of course, take that with a grain of salt. Nobody knows which way the markets will be moving, but I do at least want to be prepared to put in orders if we begin to see that lower price action, and make sure to stay mentally fit and mentally ready in case we see those red days. That said, that'll do it here for today's update, touching on some Bitcoin technical analysis, what we can expect, and then talking about how that translates over into Cardano. As always, if you did enjoy updates like these, I'd appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by and you do want more content like this, breaking down the charts here in Cardano, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me surrounding anything I've discussed today, then make sure to leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.